television today, but he was interred into the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Today. And so it is an honor to tell his story for you all out here tonight. A little bit of housekeeping here. Turn off your cell phones. No flash photography except for our business manager who is filming the show. If there is an emergency or a fire, the exits are here, and good luck to you. What else is coming? You'll make it. After the Laramie project, which I'm really proud to have, it was directed by one of its creators, who was the chief writer of the Teutonic Theater Company, and you'll hear more about that inside the play as it begins. After this production, we will be doing the musical memoir based on a real story called Always Patsy Cline. It has 27 Patsy Cline songs in it and stars Laura Capello, who has done this role before, and Julia Salinger, and I'll be directing it. Hope you come and see that November 29th through December 16th, followed by the following weekend, which will be our Townie Holiday Extravaganza. And if you have a talent, I won't ask what it is, but if you'd like to submit it and come in and perform for us for that, it's an open game. Just email me and let me know if you want to come in. Last year we had one of the mailmen who played banjo and sang Ave Maria. So, I hope that will inspire you to think about what you might be able to do. Let's see what else we got going on. A week from tonight, we will be having an artist tribute to one of our great and longtime supporters of this theater and many, many, many institutions around this Outer Cape, as well as the world, Tim McCarthy, who was very sadly and tragically lost last weekend. We'll be having an arts tribute for him from 6:30 to 7:30. It is free. There'll be some other institutions presenting, and we'll do some video and some visual arts and have a party, but there'll be a memorial service earlier in the day at Town Hall. Let me see what. Oh, none of this, of course, is possible. We're a year-round institution, not-for-profit 501c3, and we couldn't do it without our major sponsors, which include Hook, the Paulette Fund, the Provincetown Tourism Fund, Finizzi's, Victor's, WOMR, Dunes FM, Victor's, did I say that twice? Okay, Skyline Ray, and I think that might be, Kay Bear, with Kay Bear, who is part of our contest for this show and advertising. And we also have, of course, large donors is a great thing. It's on our website. There's different tiers and membership circles. You get perks, sweatshirts, invitations, tickets, all kinds of crazy things. So you can go to the website and do that, or just come to me afterwards with cold hard cash. I take it. Trust me on it. Or you can just donate anything from $1 up, on the website or here. And speaking of money, our actors, there are 10 of them, and they are your neighbors, they are your friends, they are volunteers. They are not paid employees of this theater or this production. And so a tradition out here in Cape Cod is the actor's box. And if you want to throw a few dollars for gas money or show your appreciation, buy them a drink afterwards or something, please drop a few dollars into the actor's box when you leave, and they would be really, really grateful to you for the help. So without further ado, I give you the Laramie Project.
On November 14, 1998, the members of Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of the town. During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews. The play you are about to see has been edited from those interviews, as well as from journal entries by members of the company and other found text. Company member Greg Perrott.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. My family's third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s, and basically we've had three, you know what, my daughter makes a fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live, good people, lots of space. Now all the towns in southern Wyoming are spaced out due to how the railroad came through. You see, it was how far they could go before having to stop to refuel and rewater, and well, Laramie was a major stopping point. Well, one of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
There is so much space between people and towns here. So much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy here in your life. I found that people are much nicer here than in the Midwest where I used to teach, because they're happy. They're glad when the sun is shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have is, you have your traditional top rancher. Now, they've been here forever. Laramie's been the place where they come for all their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of your land, you ruin it and you lose your living. So you first of all have to care for your land and do everything you can to improve it.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine driver.
You couldn't put me back in that mess out there, back east. Best thing about it is the climate, the cold, the wind. They say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Well, some of the times it bothers me, but most times it don't.
And then you have your university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
I loved it there, but you have to be out of your mind to let your kids out after dark. And here, in the summertime, my kids play out at night till 11 o'clock, and I don't think twice about it.
Then you have the people that live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now, Laramie, if you don't know a person, you will definitely know someone they know. So it can only be 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I love it. I mean, I love to go to the grocery store because I get to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go. And I don't really mind people knowing my business because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like the trains, too. They don't bother me. Well, some of the times they bother me, but most times they don't. Even though one goes by every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bosler, but everybody in Laramie knows him. And by the way, he's not a real doctor.
They used to carry cattle, them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silver, university student.
Laramie's better than where I grew up. I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live, good people, lots of space. Now, when that incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came up here. And, one day, a couple of them followed me out to the crime scene, and it was a beautiful day, absolutely gorgeous day, real clear and crisp. And the sky was that sky blue. You know, you'll never be able to paint it. It's just sky blue, mountains, a little snow. And this one reporter, lady person, came up to me and she said,
Well, who found the boy? Who was out here anyway?
I was like, well, it's a popular area for people to run, and mountain biking's really big out here, and horseback riding is close to town. And she looked at me and she said,
Who in the hell would want to run out here?
and I'm thinking, lady, you are missing the point. I mean, all you gotta do is just turn around and see the mountains, take a breath of the fresh air, listen to the birds, and just take in what's around you, and they were nothing but the story. Now, I didn't feel judged. I felt that they were stupid. They're missing the point. They're missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now, to tell you what Laramie is to us.
Jedediah Schultz, university student.
If you would have asked me before, I would have told you Laramie is a beautiful town, secluded enough you can have your own identity, a town with a strong community. Everyone knows everyone. The kind of town with the personality that most larger cities are stripped of. Now, after Matthew, say we're a town defined by an accident, a crime. We've become a Waco. We've become Jasper. We're a noun, definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it sure will take a while.
Journal entries, members of the company, Andy Paris.
Moises called today, and he said he had an idea for his next theater project, but there was a somberness to his voice. So I asked what it was all about, and he said he wants to do a piece about what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Velber.
Lee told me the company was thinking about going out to Laramie to conduct interviews and that they wanted me to come, but I'm hesitant. I have no real interest in prying into a town's unravel.
Amanda Gronick.
I've never done anything like this before in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises called.
The company has agreed to go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid about taking 10 people in a trip of this nature. Must make some safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries cell phones. Have made some preliminary contacts with Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She's promised to have a party for us our first night in Laramie and to introduce us to possible interviewees.
I must tell you, when I first heard that you were thinking about coming here, you know, when you first called me, I wanted to say, you just kicked me in the stomach. Why are you doing this to me? And then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it and decided that there has been so much negative closure on this whole thing, and our students really need to talk. I mean, when this first happened, they started talking about it. But then the media descended, all dialogue stopped. You know, I love my students because they are free thinkers. I mean, you might not like what they have to say, and you might not like their opinions because they can be very redneck. But they are honest and they are truthful. So there's an excitement here I have with my students, a dynamic that I never had when I was in North Dakota or the Midwest, because there's so much Puritanism there that a lot of times they don't even have opinions. You can't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd much rather have opinions I don't like and have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name's Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. Family's been in Wyoming, well, for generations. Now when it came time to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me to college. And I wanted to study theater, so I knew the only way I was going to go to college is that I'd get on a scholarship. So there's this competition every year, the Wyoming State High School competition, and I knew if I didn't get first place in duets, I wasn't going to win the scholarship. So I went to the theater department of the university looking for good scenes, and I asked one of the professors, I was like, I need a killer scene. And he was like, oh, here you go. This is it. And it was from Angels in America. And I took it, and I read it, and I knew I could win best scene, and I did a good enough job. Now, when the time came, I told my parents about the competition. Now, you have to understand, my parents come to everything, every ball game, every hockey game, everything I'd ever done. And they took me into the room, and they told me if I did that scene, they weren't going to come to the competition. Because they thought it was wrong. Because they thought homosexuality was wrong. They felt that strongly about it that they didn't want to see their son do one of the most important things he'd done in his life up to that point. And so I didn't know what to do. I've never, ever gone against my parents' wishes. So I was a little worried about it. But I decided to do it. And all I can remember is that after the competition, me and my scene partner came up to each other and we shook hands. And there was a standing ovation. And we took first place and we won. And that's how come I can afford to be here at the university, because of that scene. And it was one of the best moments of my life. And my parents weren't there. And to this day, it's one of the only things they didn't see me do. And thinking back on it, I think, why did I do it? Why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay. And I never had a strong viewpoint either way. And I guess the only honest answer is, I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you could tell him.
Company member Greg Parati.
We arrived at the Denver airport today and drove to Wyoming. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was odd that the Wyoming sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Leigh Fondakowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954 when Debbie Reynolds was popular, so there are a lot of us around here. I promise I won't slap your elbows if you keep them on the table.
Today, Lee tried to explain to me, to no avail, what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
we're just passing through.
Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign. Population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the buildings still retained the shape of a turn-of-the-century western town. Oh, and as we passed the University Inn, on the sign where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it said, "Hey, is not a Laramie value."
Greg Parati.
I met today with two long-term Laramie residents, Marge Murray and Allison Mears, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up. Well, it was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land. I mean, you could keep your pet cow, your horse, your little chickens, you know. Just have a little bit of acreage.
And I could run around with my all-togethers. I could do the housework while the kids were in school, and nobody could see me. And even if they did, well...
Then that's their problem.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I have the expression correct. In your all-togethers?
Well, yeah, honey. While we're closed.
Now, how's he going to use that in his play?
So this was a big ranching town?
Oh, not just ranching. This was a big railroad town at one time, before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha. So now, well, it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad, because even, what was it, in the 50s? Well, they had one big roundhouse, and they had such a shop they could build a complete engine.
Yeah, my mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yup, she washed engines. Her name was Minnie. We used to sing that song. You know that song?
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie.
They can't corner you there! But I'll tell you, Wyoming's bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has the big high whoop-de-doo jobs, but Wyoming, unless you're a professional, well, the bulk of the people are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've been in the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. And like I said, there's a difference in Laramie, and there always has been. What it is a class distinction. It's about the well-educated and the ones that are not. And the educated don't understand why the ones that are not don't get educated. You see, that's why I said before my kids had to fight, because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
And that's not bragging, that's fact.
But here in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, well, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Do I have to say it? Well, it's shit out of luck. Oh, Lordy, you got that on your tape. Boy, you were getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So let me ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I know enough people in town who are involved, and I have a daughter that's on the sheriff's department. Now, as far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or the other, as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I would just say no thank you, which is pretty much the attitude of the Laramie population. They might poke one if they've been in a bar situation and they've been drinking. They might even smack one on the mouth, but then they would just walk away. Most of them said that they would just say, "I don't swing that way," and whistle on about their business. Now, Laramie is live and let live.
I'd say that Marge probably knows a lot more, except she's even willing to say, and we have to respect her for that.
Now, where are you going with this story?
We haven't quite decided yet, but I'm sure when we're finished, we're going to try to bring it around to Laramie.
Well then, there are some parts I just won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris.
Today, for the first time, we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Speaker, a shop owner in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time we heard somebody refer to him as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on the 2nd of October, I get a phone call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
It was Matthew Shepard, and he said, "Can you pick me up at the corner of 3rd and Grand?" So, anyhow, I pull up to the corner to see who Matthew Shepard, you know. It's a little guy, about 5'2". Soaking wet, I bet you. 97 pounds, tops. They say he weighed 110, but I wouldn't believe it. They also said he was 5'5" in the newspapers, but this man, he was really only about 5'2", maybe 5'1". So he walks up to the window. I'm going to try to go in step so you can better understand the principle of this man. So he walks up to the window, and I say, "Are you Matthew Shepard?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt. And I want you to know I am gay, and we're going to go to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that?" And I said, "How are you paying?" Well, the fact is, Laramie doesn't have any gay bars, and for that matter, neither does Wyoming. So he was hiring me to take him down to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit, you know what I'm saying? He always was. But I liked him because he was straight. Forward. See what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward. See what I'm saying?
I don't know, how does any one person ever tell about another? You really should talk to my sister, Romaine. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time, we called him Choo Choo. Because we used to call him Matthew, and then we just called him Choo Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and he'd be like, and he'd smile at everyone. He just made you feel great. And he would stare people down in the coffee shop because he always wanted to sit on the end seat so that he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in that seat, he'd just sit there and stare at them until they left. And then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That's all his big interest was watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, that's the only TV station I ever saw his TV tuned into. He was just really smart in political affairs, but not too smart on common sense things. So he moves to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
To the point of being mouthy, I'd almost say. But he was having difficulties adjusting, and he always said this was his town, and he made that quite clear. And so his mouthiness, his shyness, gave way to this person who was excited about this track he was about to embark on. He was figuring out wanting to work on human rights and how he was going to do that. And when that happens, this person begins to bloom a little, and he was saying things like, "Wow, there are opportunities here. There are things I can do in this world. I can be important."
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack, and he told me that he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus. And he said he was enjoying it. He was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. I mean, he was totally stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
And in retrospect, and I can only say this in retrospect, I think that's where he was headed. Human rights. Which only adds to the irony and tragedy of this.
Now, let me tell you something else here. There's more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know. I know for a fact. They're not particularly the what do you call them, the queens, the gay people, queens. You know, you run around faggot type people. No, they're the ones that rope, bale, hay, jump on horses, brand them, and kick ass. You see what I'm saying? Like I always say, don't fuck with a Wyoming queer because they will kick you in your fucking ass. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to say. Because I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people here. I've been living up here for some 40-odd years. You see what I'm saying? And I don't think Wyoming people give a damn, one way or another, if you're gay or straight. That's just what I just said. Doesn't matter. If there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case, now you stop and think, who's getting what? You see what I'm saying? Now, geez, it don't take a big, intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connolly.
is that I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus, and that was 1992, so that wasn't that long ago. Oh, I was asked at my interview what my husband did, so I came out then. Do you want a funny story? When you first get here as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do, and so I was in my office and I noticed that this woman called. I was expecting, it was a health insurance phone call, something like that, so I called her back. And I could hear her. She's working on her keyboard, clicking away. I said, this is Kathy Connolly returning your phone call, and she said, "Oh, it's you?" And I thought, this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I was like, uh-huh. And she said, I hear you came with a couple. I'm one too. Not a couple, just a person. And so she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming. And she wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians that she knew who wouldn't be seen with me. That I would irreparably taint them. That just to be seen with me could be a problem.
I knew when I moved here it was going to be hard living as a gay man.
Jonas Sloaner.
But I have always told myself people should live where they want to live. And, well, there'd be times I'd go down to Denver and I would go out to the gay bars and people would ask me where I'm from and I'd say Laramie, Wyoming, and I met so many men from Wyoming down there. So many gay men from here that were like, I couldn't live there. I just had to get out. How can you live there? Grr, 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 grr. And every now and then there would be a guy, oh gosh, I miss Laramie. No, really, I mean it. I love it there. That's where I want to live. And they get this starry-eyed look in their eyes. And I'm like, well, if that's where you want to live, do it. I mean, imagine if more people stayed in small towns. But it is easier said than done, of course.
Today we are moving from our motel and heading for the best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it is a better Western.
Amanda Grant.
Today we divided up to go to different churches in the community. Moises and I were given a Baptist church. We were welcomed into the services by the Reverend himself, standing at the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember of his service that morning. My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, I have a simple truth that I tell to my colleagues, and I'm going to tell it to you today.
Okay.
The word is either sufficient or it is not. Now, scientists tell me that human history, that the world is 5 billion or 6 billion years old. After all, what's a billion years, give or take, right? The Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Reed Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town, Baptist, Mormon, they're everywhere, not just in Salt Lake, they're all over. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has this little thing going on that irritates some folks.
Doug Love, state ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon Church.
And that is that we believe God still speaks to man today. We don't think it happened and some folks wrote it in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So the spectrum would be on the left side of that panel, so far left that I'm probably sitting by myself, is me and the Unitarian Church. Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists, and we're, we're not even sure we're a religion. And to my right on that spectrum, and to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest, who's well established here, and God bless him. He did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted a vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted, When we did the vigil, we wanted other ministers to get involved, and we called some of them, and they were not going to get involved. It was like, we're going to stand back and see which way the wind is blowing, and this angered me immensely. We are supposed to stand out as leaders, and I thought, wow, what is going on here?
God has set boundaries, and part of our responsibility is to figure out what is it that God wants. So you study Scripture, you look to your leaders, and you sort of start to get an idea of what the bounds are. Now, once you know what the bounds are, you sort of get an idea for what's out of bounds. There is a proclamation that came out in the church about the family, and that is, a family is defined as one woman, one man, and children. That's a family. That's about as clear as you can get on that. There is no room for sexual deviation or permissiveness in the Mormon Church. No leniency. We just think it's out of bounds.
I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But you just let the Bible be your guide.
Amen.
It's in there. It's all in there.
The Christian pastors, many of the conservative ones, were silent on this. Conservative Christians use the Bible to show the rest of the world that it says here in the Bible, and most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight that?
I am a biblicist, which means that the Bible doesn't need me to be true. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around, tumbleweed, cement factory. I thought, what in the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I found out what the hell I'm doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubaydah Ullah, an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah. My parents are from Bangladesh. 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. That's really changed my life in Laramie. Yeah. Like, people say things to me like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? And it's like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, So I'll be like, it's a part of my religion. And they'll be, it's the worst part, because they'll be like, I know it's a part of your religion, but why? And it's like, how am I supposed to go through the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord, standing there holding my popping chins? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's so unreal to me that, that a group from New York would be writing a play about Laramie. And I was picturing, like, you're going to be writing a play about my town. You're going to be on stage in New York, and you're going to be acting like you're us. That's so weird.
Hello? Yes, hello. My name is Amanda Gronick, and I'm here in Laramie, working with a theater company. I went to your husband's church on Sunday, and I'm extremely interested in speaking with the Reverend about his thoughts about recent events. Well, I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views about homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle. He was just bombarded by press after this happened, and the media has been just terrible about it. Oh, I know, I understand, it must have been just terrible. Yes, I think we're hoping it all just goes away. Well, do you think maybe I could call back and speak with your husband just briefly? Well, all right. You can call back tonight at 9 o'clock. Oh, thank you so much, I'll do that.
Today, Barbara and I met at the Fireside Bar, which is the last place Matthew was seen in public.
The Fireside definitely feels like a college bar with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke night. Still, a few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
First person we met with was Matt Nicholson.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He owned Laramie's first opera house. It was called the Old Blue Front. In 1870, Louisa, Grandma Swain, cast the first woman's ballot in any free election anywhere in the world. That is why Wyoming is called the Equality State. So, I want to reestablish my bar business as the Old Blue Front Opera House Good Time Emporium. Yes, sir. I want to have a gift shop and a restaurant and a pool hall. I want to do all this shit, you know, every night's ladies' night. And so, the Fireside Bar is my first step toward the Old Blue Front Opera House Good Time Emporium.
So, what about the night Matthew Shepard was here?
Yeah, well, that night we had karaoke night here, and there was about 20, 30 people. Matthew Shepard walked in that door, and he was sitting right where you're sitting, minding his own business. And you know who you ought to talk to? You ought to talk to Matt Galloway. He's the fellow who was bartending that night. You should meet him. His character stands for itself. Hey, Matt Galloway bartending tonight.
All right, I'm gonna make this brief, quick, get it over with. But it's gonna be everything. Actually, just the facts. All right, here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in. Usual time, Tuesday night. 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up. Alone, sits down, pours a Heineken.
Phil DeBree, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken and nothing else. Heineken. Even though you have to pay $9.50 for a six-pack, he'd always buy the same beer.
Now, what can I tell you about Matt? If you had 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar you've ever been in. And I'm not talking about sexual orientation, just absolute mannerisms, manners, politeness, intelligence, taking care of me, as in tips, everything, conversation, dress nice, clean cut. Some people, you know, sits down, please, thank you, offers intellect within their conversation. So he just kicks it there, didn't seem to have any worries or like he was waiting for anyone to enjoy his drink and the company around. Now, 11:45, 11:30, 11:45, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson walked in. Now, I didn't know their names at the time, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused. So they just walk in very, you know, stone-faced, sort of dirty, grimy, rude, and they walk up to the bar, and as you know, paid for a pitcher and dimes and quarters, which I mean, you don't forget that. You don't forget $5.50 and dimes and quarters. That's a freaking nightmare. Now, Aaron and Russell, they didn't seem intoxicated at all. They just paid for their beer, brought it back to the pool area, and kept it to themselves. Next thing I know, about half hour later, they're walking around, no beer. I remember thinking to myself, I'm not going to offer them another. They just paid for a pitcher and dimes and quarters. I got a real good feeling they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Money meant nothing to Matthew because he came from a lot of it. And he would hand over his wallet in 2 seconds because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can claim it was robbery. I don't buy it for even an iota of a second.
Then a few moments later, I look over, and Aaron and Russell are talking to Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and wanted to get with Aaron to rest.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And Aaron got aggravated with it and told him he was straight, didn't want anything to do with him, and walked off. Aaron said that's when him and Russ went to the bathroom and decided to pretend they were gay, get him in a truck and rob him. They wanted to teach him a lesson, not to come on the straight people.
Okay, no, they stated that he approached them, that he came on to them. I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute that statement 100%. Refute it. Let me give you 2 reasons why. 1, character difference. Why them? Why would he come on to them? He wasn't coming on to anyone else. Oh, they say, oh, well, he's a gay, he's a flaming gay, he's gonna come on to people like that. Bullshit! He didn't come on to me. Hello? He didn't come on to them. I don't believe it. 2, territorialism is the word I'm gonna use here, and that's the fact that Matt was sitting there. Aaron and Russell were in the pool area. Now, upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area. In the area Matt had been sitting all night. Now, who approached you by that?
Well, Matthew was the kind of person, like, he would never not talk to someone for any reason. If someone started talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. He never had any problem just starting up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible Matt could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was at the bar alone without any friends made him that much more vulnerable.
Now, the thing is, and this is what I'm testifying to, because, well, basically, I'm the key eyewitness in this case. Basically, what I'm testifying to is I saw Matthew Shepard leave. I saw 2 individuals leave with Matthew. Now, I didn't see their faces, but I saw the back of their heads. Now, at the same time, Aaron and Russell were no longer around. Now, you do the math.
Actually, the DJ was the last one to talk with him and gave him a cigarette on the way out. His name is Shadow.
I was the last person to talk to Matt before he left the fireside. I was just bullshitting around with my shit, and he stopped me. I stopped him, actually. And he's like, hey, Shadow, da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, what, man, you getting ready to leave? And he's like, yeah, man, and this and that. But then I noticed them 2 guys that stood outside. You could see it, man. They were standing there. And he was looking over at them, and they were looking back at him. And you see the guys with him. You see them like nervous, you know, like anxious to leave and shit. So when they took off, I seen it when they took off. It was a black truck. Yeah, it was a small truck. And the 3 of them sat in the front seat, and Matt sat in the middle. And I didn't think nothing of it, you know? I didn't think the guys were gonna be like that.
Friends of Aaron McKinney.
Oh, I know Aaron. I like Aaron a lot. Aaron's a good kid. That's why I was shocked when I heard about this. I'm like, now I know he'd been living out far at a trailer house with his girl. What he told me. Now they've been dating since last summer. Now they must have got pregnant right away because they had a little kid. 21-year-old, running around with a little kid. So yeah, that's the kind of guy Aaron was, always dressing in, you know, big clothes. Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. Time I knew him, he was just a young kid, you know, trying to just fit in, acting tough, acting cool. But if you got in his face about it, he'd back down like some sort of scared kid.
Sherry Amundsen.
Russell's just so sweet. He's the one who was an Eagle Scout. I mean, his whole presence was just quiet and sweet. And I mean, of course, it doesn't make sense to me. And I know people snap and whatever. And like I pointed out already, it wasn't a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him at the Chuck Wagon too. I remember like at the Christmas party at the Chuck Wagon, you know, I saw him and he was just totally drunk out of his mind. Like we all were, pretty much just party time, and he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He's still the same little meek Russell. I remember him coming up to me and saying, when you get a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance? Which we never did get around to doing that. But now I just want to shake him, you know? What were you thinking? What the hell were you thinking?
The fence. I've been place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, it is a very powerful personal experience to go out there. It's so stark and so empty, and you can't help but think about Matthew out there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures with that view up there, isolated, and the God, my God, why have you forsaken me comes to mind.
Company member Craig Pride.
Phil Labrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure no one saw me cry.
Leigh Fondakowski. Greg was crying on the way back. I felt the same way. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there at the fence. Well, I took off on my bicycle about 5 p.m. on Wednesday from my dorm. I just kind of felt like going for a ride. So I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not super familiar with that area, so on my way back down, I didn't know where I was going. I was just sort of picking the way to go, which now it just makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there's no way that I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep ass sand, and I wanted to turn around, but for some reason I kept going. And I went along, and there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled it. I went over the handlebars and ended up on the ground. So I got up, and I was just kind of dusting myself off, and I was looking around, and I noticed something which ended up to be Matt. And I just thought it was a scarecrow. I was like, Halloween's coming up. I thought it was a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike, walked it around the fence that was there. It was a buck-type fence, and I got closer to him, and I noticed his hair. And that was a major key to me noticing that it was a human being, was his hair, because I just thought it was a dummy. Seriously, I even noticed the chest going up and down. I still thought it was a dummy, you know? I just thought it was like some kind of mechanism. But when I saw hair, well, I knew it was a human being, so I ran to the nearest house, and I just ran as fast as I could and called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet, so I got out of my vehicle and I raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny, and he was laying on his back, and he was tied up to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could. The gentleman laying on the ground, Matthew Shepard, was covered in dry blood all over his head, and he had dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing, and he was doing the best he could. I was going to breathe for him, but I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered, like I said, in partially dry blood and blood all over his head, and the only place where he didn't have any blood on him at all on his face was where it appeared he had been crying down his face. His head looked distorted, you know. It didn't look normal. It seems he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working in the emergency room the night Matthew Shepard was brought in. I don't think that any of us can remember seeing a patient in that condition for a long time. Those of us who've worked in big city hospitals have seen this, but we have some people here who've not worked in a big city hospital. And it's not something you expect here. You expect it. You expect to see this kind of injuries from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see gross injuries from something like that, this horrendous, terrible thing. But you don't expect to see that from someone doing this to another person. The ambulance report said that it was a beating, so we knew.
there was nothing I could do. I mean, if there was anything that I could have done to help him, I would have done it. But there was nothing, and I was yelling at the top of my lungs at him, just trying to get something out of him, like, hey, wake up! Hello! He didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. And he was bound by a very thin white rope that went around the bottom of the pole and up about 4 inches up off of the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I got my boot knife out and I tried to slip it in there between his wrist and the rope. But I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is, well, certainly you'd like to think that it's somebody from out of town that comes through and beats somebody. I mean, things like this happen, you know. Shit happens, and it happens in Laramie. But if there's been somebody who has been beaten repeatedly, well, certainly this is something that offends us. I think that's a good word. It offends us.
He was bound so tight. I finally did get my knife in there. I'm sorry, we rolled him over on his left side, and when we did that, he quit breathing. So I immediately put him back on his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me just enough room to cut him free there. I seen the EMS unit trying to make it to the location. When the ambulance did come, we put a neck collar on him and placed him on a backboard and then scooted him out under the fence. And then Rob drove him over to Ivinson Hospital's emergency room.
Now, the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew came in, Aaron McKinney was brought in by his girlfriend. Now, it seems he had gotten into a fight later on that night back in town. So I'm working on Aaron, and the ambulance comes in with Matthew. Now, at this point, I don't know that there's a connection at all. So I tell Aaron to wait, and I go and treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of the ER, and there's Matthew in another room, 2 doors down. Now, as soon as we saw Matthew, it was very obvious that his care was beyond our capabilities. Called the neurosurgeon at Hoover Valley, and he was on the road in an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would never have recognized him.
Then 2 days later, I found out the connection, and I was very struck. They were 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, of both their bodies. And, well, for a brief time, I wondered if this is how God feels when he looks down at us, how we're all his kids, our bodies, our souls. And I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor. The news report started rolling out Thursday night, but no name was mentioned. The brutality of the crime wasn't mentioned. All that was mentioned was a man, a Laramie man, found beaten in the prairie, basically. Later on that evening, the news report started rolling in, and they mentioned his name. And I was like, that can't be the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not my student. That can't be this person I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop,
Romaine Patterson.
and someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say that there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie, and they said his name is Matthew Shepard. And he said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish and I said, tell me what you know. I'm just like, I need to know anything you know because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story comes up on Channel 5 News, and it's just like, boom.
And the news reports kept rolling in. Young, University of Wyoming student, his age, his description. And I was like, oh my God.
And I felt sick to my stomach, just instantly sick to my stomach. And I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you what's over.
Matt Galloway.
Friday morning, I first find out about it. I walk out of class, boom, there it is, the Brandon iron. So I get in my car, drive to the nearest newsstand, buy Laramie Boomerang because I want more details. Buy that, go home. Before I can even open the paper, my boss calls me and says,
Did you hear what happened?
I'm like, yeah.
Was he in the bar Tuesday night?
I go, yeah, he was.
You gotta get down to the bar right now. We gotta discuss what's gonna go on. By that time, I was getting very upset. But the brutality of the crime wasn't even out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Rulon Stacy at Boudreaux Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We just got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. We have a couple of reporters here asking questions, and so we agreed we needed one spokesperson. As CEO, I'll do that, and we'll try and gather all the information that we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night when they started speaking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson and he's like,
We gotta get down to that arraignment. You gotta identify these guys. We gotta make sure they was in the bar.
so we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged with the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime. I said, I'm just going. I just took off. It's just down the street. So I walked a few blocks and I went to the arraignment. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There were probably 100 people from town and probably as many news media by that point. A lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids that everyone who's from around here has some relationship to. And what everyone was really, I think, waiting on pins and needles for, what would happen when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened, there's 200 people in the courtroom at this point. They walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and their shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were teary by that point. And then the judge came in and did a reading. There's a reading of the evidence that the prosecution has. It's just it's a statement of facts, and the reading of the facts was...
The essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar, and after Mr. Shepard confided he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I don't think there was any person who was left in that courtroom who wasn't crying at the end of it. I mean, it lasted 5 minutes, but it kept on getting more and more horrific, ending with...
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant King.
How could this happen? I think a lot of people don't understand, and even I don't understand how somebody can do something like this to someone. We have one of the largest vocal populations of gay people in the state, and here it's pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret other hope was that they were from somewhere else, but then of course you can create that distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, it's pretty clear we do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment, and my response was pretty catatonic. Not sleeping, not eating, don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came out about the sheer brutality of what happened, the motivations. And then, quite frankly, the media descended, and there was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the gem city of the plains, is now at the eye of the storm.
Aaron McKinney and his friend Russell Henderson came from the poor side of town.
After a gay college student lay hospitalized in critical condition after
It was huge, herds of them, hundreds of reporters everywhere, which puts a huge dent in the population of this town. There were news trucks everywhere on campus, everywhere in town. And quite frankly, we're not used to that type of attention. We're not used to that type of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are predators. Like, this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I have some privacy, please?" And the journalist was like offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started. Like the Gutenberg press, you know?
I'll tell you what, when hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I got every word I ever said on tape, so if they ever do anything funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, first-term Republican, up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crime committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to his family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We'll wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
You got the news story where they got the graphics in the background, and they got murder in Wyoming, and Wyoming's red, and it's dripping like it's got blood on it or something. And I'm like, what is this? This is sensationalism, and we're here going, we had those two guys in jail in less than a day, and I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less in the line,
Eileen and Gilligan.
that we are not a good community, and we are. The majority of people here are good people.
You get bad apples once in a while, and I think that the gay community took this as an advantage. Said this is a good time for us to exploit this.
Phil McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual, these boys decided to take it out. This never would have made the national news. Now my son's guilty before he's even gone to trial.
Look, I do think that the media actually made people accountable because they made people think. Because people like sitting in their homes, like watching TV and listening to CNN and watching Dan Ratner going, Jesus Christ. Well, that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here?
Matthew Shepard medical update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this time, I looked out there, and where there had been 2 or 3 reporters, it must have been 10 or 15 still photographers, 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The parents had just arrived. I barely introduced myself to them. I looked out there and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture that went from behind his head to just in front of the right ear. This has caused bleeding on the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the last 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We have had difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and good wishes, and we know that they are something that Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request for the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew, and so that we can concentrate all our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Chastity Paisley and Russell and Kristen Price, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact. On our next trip, we spoke with the chief investigating officer on the case, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
Well, I guess the thing that bothered me the most is when I went down to Hoover Valley, where Matthew was, and the thing that bothered me the most is seeing it, touching it. As a homicide detective, you look at bodies. This poor boy is sitting here, fighting all his life, trying to make it. I wanted it so by the book, you know?
I keep seeing that picture in my head when I found him.
Aaron Kreifels.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it to be there. I want to, like, get it out. That's the biggest part for me, is seeing that picture in my head. And it's kind of unbelievable to me, you know, that I happen to be the person who found him, because the big question with me, like, with my religion, is like, why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
I mean, not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets, of seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it was coming after me, having to stop because I was shaking so bad. And in fact, the truck did not come after me, but my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have the opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
Had I, amazing hindsight 2020, to have stopped what occurred, I keep thinking I should have noticed. These guys should have not been talking to that guy. I should have not had my head down those 20 seconds while I was washing dishes. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying, you spend hours and hours and hours studying. Talking to the officers, making sure they understand, talk to your witnesses again. And then always I keep coming back, I get this flash of seeing Matthew. I wanted it so tight, there was no way they were going to get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence,
Reggie Flutie.
there was just an overwhelming amount of blood, and we tried to wear protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us these shit gloves, you know, and so you put them on, and you put them on, and they just kept breaking until finally you just ran out of gloves, you know, and so you figure, you know, don't hesitate. That's what your mind tells you all the time. Don't hesitate. You just keep moving and try to help Matthew and find an airway, and that's what you do, you know.
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, well, I didn't think there was a better choice for her. She could handle anything that came her way.
About a day and a half later, the hospital calls me, and the doctor said Matthew had HIV. He said you've been exposed, and it's a bad exposure. You see, it's because I was building a lean-to for my llamas, and my hands had all these open cuts on them, and then I'm thinking, oh, I'm screwed, you know. Oh, shoot, you know.
You want to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, I said, okay, what do I do? And he said, get on up here. So I got on up there, and they put me on the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now, that's a medication that they told me that if it's administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it might stop you from getting the disease.
Yeah, that is one mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I've lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair.
And quite frankly, I wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Now, please understand that not one of us was mad at Matthew. But maybe we wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson, and two absolutely human beings could cause so much grief for so many people. This has been terrible for my whole family, but mostly for her and her kids.
I think brought home to my girls what the mom does for a living.
You know what I'm going to tell you now, Reggie?
Both my parents have said the same damn thing.
You're going to quit that damn
And you
job!
know, it's just a parent everything, and they're terribly proud of you because you do a good job, whether you're handling a case like this or you're handling a drunk. It's just they don't want you getting hurt, you know?
Like I said before, there's a right way, there's a wrong way, and then there's Reggie.
And finally, I just had to say, oh, for God's sake, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn!
They tell me I'm stubborn and I don't believe them, you know. It's just, okay, I heard your opinion and now here's mine. I'm 39 years old. What are they gonna do, spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
That'd be pretty funny, you know. What can they say?
Well, I just hope she doesn't go before me. I mean, I couldn't handle that.
University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
This is a young person who read my statement on the Denver Post story and sent me an email to me directly and said,
You and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard, just as the Germans who looked the other way are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters, unless and until you acknowledge that Matt Shepard's beating is not just a random occurrence, not just the work of a couple of random crazies. You have Matthew's blood on your hands!
and I can't begin to tell you what that does to you. It's like you can't possibly know what I'm thinking. You can't possibly know what this has done to me and my family and my community.
That week alone, vigils were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, Colorado Springs. Soon after, in Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, Portland, Maine, among others. In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered, and in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And the Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hopes for Matthew's full recovery.
Matthew Shepard medical update, 9 a.m., October 11.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the press respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew.
There are certain things when I'm sitting in church and
Jedediah Schultz.
the Reverend will tell you flat out he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't know, I think right now I'm going through some changes. I'm still learning about myself. And I don't feel like I know enough about certain things that I can make a decision that says homosexuality is right. When you've been told your whole life that it's wrong. And, I mean, right now I just say I don't agree with it. Yeah, I don't agree with it. But maybe that's just because I couldn't do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's the way God intended it to happen. But I mean, I don't hate homosexuals. I mean, I'm not going to persecute them or anything like that. I mean, at all. That's not going to be getting in the way between me and the other person at all.
Well, it's preached in the schools that being gay is okay.
Conrad Miller.
And if my kids asked me, I'd set them down and I'd say, well, this is what gay people do. This is what animals do. Okay, and I tell them, this is the life. This is the lifestyle. This is what they do. And I'd say, this is why I believe it's wrong.
Well, there's more gay people around than what you think.
Murdoch Cooper.
It doesn't bother anybody because most of them that are gay or lesbian, you know damn well who to talk to. If you step out of line, you're asking for it. Now, some people are saying that he made a pass at them. You don't pick up regular people. Now, I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel better because it was partially Matthew Shepard's fault. And partially the guys who did it. You know, maybe it's 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety. Zacky Salmon, I think we all were. I think it's because we all know somewhere deep down it can happen to us at any time, you know? I mean, I'd be afraid to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection for my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
You know that saying, you leave me alone, I leave you alone?
Jonas Sloniker.
It's even in some of that Western literature, live and let live. That is such crap. I tell my friends that, even my gay friends bring it up sometimes, and I say, that is such crap, you know? I mean, what it boils down to is, if I don't tell you I'm a fag, you won't beat the crap out of me. What is so great about that? That's a good philosophy?
We went to the candle vigil,
Zubaida Ula.
and it was so nice to be with people who felt like shit. I kept feeling like, I don't deserve to feel this bad, you know? And then somebody got up there and said, come on guys, let's show the world that Laramie isn't this kind of town. But it is this kind of town. If it wasn't this kind of town, then why did it happen here? I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, that's a lie. Because it happened here. So how can it not be the kind of town where this kind of thing happens? I mean, that's totally like looking at an Escher painting and getting all confused. Like, that's just totally like circular logic. Like, how can you even say that? And we have to mourn this. And we have to be sad that we live in a town, in a state, in a country where shit like this happens. I mean, these people are trying to distance themselves from this crime. And we need to own this crime, I feel. Everyone needs to own it. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
On the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a recent fall. So I was very disappointed because I wanted to walk with the people that were marching for Matthew, but I couldn't. So I watched from my window, and it's just that I'm 52 years old, and I'm gay. I've lived here a long time and I've seen a lot. So I was so moved when I saw the tag at the end of the parade, about 100 people marching for Matthew Shepard behind a banner. And then the parade went to the end of the block to make a U-turn and I went to the other side of my apartment to wait for it to come down the other street.
I was right out there in front where they were holding the banner for Matthew.
Let me tell you, I never had goosebumps so long in my life. It was incredible. Just a mass of people, just families, mothers, holding on to their 6-year-olds, tying these armbands around their 6-year-olds, trying to explain to them why they should wear an armband. It was amazing. It was like one of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life.
Well, sure enough, about 10 minutes went by, and the parade came down the other street. And that's when I noticed the most amazing thing. The number of people marching for Matthew had grown 5 times. There were at least 500 people marching for Matthew. 500 people. Can you imagine? The tag at the end of the parade was larger than the entire parade, and people kept joining in. And you know what? I started to cry. Tears were rolling down my face, and I thought, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. And my second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
Well, I wasn't really all that involved per se. I mean, my husband's a highway patrolman, so that's really how I first found out about all this. Now, when I first heard about it, I mean, I just thought it was horrible. I mean, nobody deserves this. I don't care who you are. But at the same time, there wasn't anything that was brought out about that highway patrolman being killed. I mean, there was nothing. Nothing. And nobody said anything about that old man that killed him. He was driving down the road, and he shouldn't have been driving, and he killed him. And I mean, he was one of ours, and it was just a little piece in the paper. I mean, my husband worked with him. This man was brand new on the force. And it was just a little piece, a little piece in the paper. Now, it's my feeling that the media is portraying him as a saint and making him out as a martyr. I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. I mean, I didn't know him, but I just heard so many things about him that it was scary. I mean, about the kind of person that he was, and spreading AIDS and a few other things. You know, about the kind of character he was. I mean, he was just a barfly, you know, just a barfly. And I think that he pushed himself around. I think that he flaunted. I mean, everybody's got problems. Why they exemplified him, I don't know. What's the difference? You're gay? A hate crime is a hate crime. If you murder someone, you hate them. Makes no difference if you're gay or a prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I just don't understand.
Company member Leigh Fondakowski, this is one of the last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews non-stop, and we are exhausted.
It is 7:30 in the morning, and we have to meet Father Roger. I was wishing we could skip it all together, but we have to follow through to the end, so here we go. 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest. Matthew Shepard has served us well. You realize that? Oh, he has served us well. I don't mean to sit here and condemn Matthew to perfection, but I can think of no one who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. not going to sit here and say that I was this bold man, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in this community when this happened, and I thought, should we call the bishop and get his permission to do the vigil? And I was like, well, hell no, I'm not going to do that. His permission doesn't make it correct. You realize that? Now, I'm not knocking bishops. What is correct is correct. But you people, you're just here on a search, though. I will say this. I will trust you people that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct. You have a responsibility to do that. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew? They did do violence to Matthew, but do you realize that every time someone calls you a fag, or you a blez, or whatever,
Or a dyke.
Dyke, yes, dyke. Do you realize that that too is violence? That is the very seed of violence, and I would regret it immensely if you somehow use something I said to cultivate that sense of violence. Even in the smallest form, I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Andrew Gomez.
Yeah, I was in there. I was in prison with Aaron in December. I got thrown in over Christmas. Assault and battery. 2 counts. I don't want to talk about it. And so I'm in there, sitting there eating my Christmas dinner, trying to eat my stuffing, my motherfucking bread, my little roll and whatnot, and I'm like, yo, homie, tell me something, please. I'm thinking how I worded it, like, why would you kill a faggot if you're destined to be a faggot? I mean, think about it. He's either gonna get humped, or he's gonna die. I mean, think about that. I don't understand it. Why would you do that? And you know what he says? Honest to God, this is what he says. He goes, well, you tried to grab my dick. That's what he said. He's dumb, dog. He don't even act like it was nothing. I heard they was auctioning those boys off up there in the Max Ward where the killers go. When they found out Aaron was coming to prison, yo, I want him. Set aside 5 suits, 7 cartons of cigarettes. Auction his ass off. I'd be scared to go to prison if I was those 2 boys.
Hello, Reverend? Yes, hello. I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you? Yes, she did, and let me just say that I don't know that I want to talk to anyone about any of this incident. You see, I am somewhat involved, and yes, I completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your service on Sunday. You went to the services on Sunday? Yes, I did. On Sunday? Yes, this past Sunday? Did I meet you? Yes, you welcomed me at the beginning, I believe. Oh, I see. Well, let me just say that I am not afraid to be controversial and to speak my mind, and that is not necessarily the views of my congregation per se. Now, as I said, I am somewhat involved, that half the people in this case, well, the girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation, and one of the accused has visited. Now, these 2 people, the accused, have forfeited their lives. We've been after the 2 I mentioned for ages, trying to get them to live right, to do right. And now, one boy's on suicide watch, and I am working with him. And until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice, I will work for his salvation. Now, I think they deserve the death penalty. I will try to deal with them spiritually. Right, I understand. Now, as for the victim, I know that that life tell you one thing. I hope that as Matthew Shepard was tied to that fence, that he had time to reflect on a moment where someone spoke the word of the Lord to him, and before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle. Thank you for speaking with me, Reverend.
About 11:30 that night, I had just barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said his blood pressure has started to drop. Well, let's wait and see. And she called me about 10 after. He just died. And so I quick got dressed and came in and went to the ICU where the family was, and Judy came up to me and she put her arms around me, and I put my arms around her, and we just stood there for about, honestly, for about 10 minutes, just because what else do you do? And then we had to sit and talk about things that you just... Dennis, this is now public knowledge, and I'm going to go out there and I'm going to tell the whole world that this has happened, because by this time it was clear to us that it was the world, it was the whole world. And so Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out there at 4 a.m.
Matthew Shepard, medical update at 4:30 a.m., Monday, October 12th.
At 12 midnight on October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified the family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did make the following statement. The family again asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end and relieved stress and guilt from the family. He came into the world premature and left the world premature. His mother said, "Go home and give your kids a hug. And don't let a day go by without telling them that you love them." And I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it on national television. But you know, we've been up for like 72 hours straight and gone home and gone to sleep for half an hour and then had to get up and come in, and maybe I was just I don't know. In a moment of complete brain deadness while I was out there reading that statement, I thought of my own 4 daughters. And go home and hug her kids, and she doesn't have her kid anymore. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, this is so lame. And then we started getting emails and letters, and most of them were just generally very kind. But I did get this one. This guy wrote me and said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients, or just the facts?" And as I told you before, this is not a lifestyle with which I agree. But having been thrown into this, I guess I didn't understand the magnitude with which some people hate. And of all the letters we got, there were just 2 or 3 that were like that. Most of them were thank you for your caring and compassion. And Matthew had caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
Today, I ran into Doc and told him we were thinking about coming back out for the up-and-coming trial of Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. And this is what he had to say.
Well, I'll tell you what. If they put those two boys to death, that would defeat everything that Matt would be thinking about on them. Because Matt would not want those two to die. He would want to leave them with hope. H-O-P-E. Just like the whole world hoped that Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see? The whole thing ropes around hope. H-O-P-E.
Now, the day of the funeral, it was snowing so bad, big, huge, wet snowflakes. And when I got there were thousands of people dressed in just black, and there were umbrellas everywhere. Now, there were two churches. One church for immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature, and another church for everyone else who wanted to be there. And still, hundreds of people outside that couldn't fit into either of the churches. There was a big park next to the church. That's where these people were, and that park was full.
The liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm that they had had.
Tiffany Edwards.
Like that anyone could ever tell. Like trees fell down and the power went out for a couple of days because of it. And I just thought, it's like the forces of the nature at work, you know? Like whatever higher power, like blows storms, was like blowing this storm.
For our brother Matthew, let us pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, I am the resurrection and the life. We pray to the Lord.
Hear us, Lord.
My most striking memory from the funeral.
Carrie Drake, Casper Star Tribune.
Was seeing the Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas. That scene go up in the park.
Do you believe in the Bible?
Yes, Lord.
Do you believe you're supposed to separate the precious from the Bible? You don't believe that part of the Bible? You stand over there ignorant to the fact that 2 times for every verse the Bible talks about God's love, talks about God's hate.
A bunch of high school kids who got out early came over and started yelling at some of these people in the protest, the Fred Phelps people. And across the street, you had people lining up for the funeral. Well, I remember a guy. I remember this skinhead coming over, and he was dressed in leather and spikes everywhere, and he came over from across the street where the protest was. And he came into the crowd, and he had green spiked hair, and I just thought, oh, this is going to be a really ugly confrontation. But instead, he came over, and he started talking to some people, and he started leading them in Amazing Grace.
Now, we wouldn't be out here if this was another murder the state had to deal with. The state deals with hundreds of murders every day. This murder is different. Because the fags are bringing us out here trying to turn Matthew Shepard into a poster boy for the gay lifestyle. And we're going to answer. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. By the time we got to the Albany County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute of God.
But so was Romaine Patterson.
That perfect attribute of God. Well, we love that attribute of God, and we're going to preach it. Because God's hatred is pure. It's a determination. It's a determination that says He's going to send some people to hell. That is God's hatred.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral and finding out that he was coming to Laramie for the trial of Russell Henderson, I decided that someone needed to stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think at times like this, when we're talking about hatred as much as the nation is right now, that someone needs to show that there's a better way of dealing with that kind of hatred. So, our idea is to dress up like angels. And so we have designed an angel outfit. For our wings are huge. They're like big-ass wings. And there'll be 10 to 20 of us that are angels. And what we're going to do is we're going to encircle Phelps. And because of our big wings, we are going to completely block him. So, this big-ass band of angels comes in. We don't say a fucking word. We just turn our backs to him, and we stand there. And we're a group of people bringing forth a message of peace, and love, and compassion. And we're calling it angel action. Yeah, This 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
And when those old preachers put their hands on me, it was called an ordination. Mine was from Isaiah 58:1. Cry loud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions.
And I knew that my angels were going to be taking the brunt of everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view, and he was going to be like pissed off to all hell. So I went out and bought all my angels earplugs.
The court is in session.
Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Steger. As soon as jury selection began, everyone was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be a part of this trial. I hope I don't get called. Or, oh my God, I've been called. How do I get off? Just wanting to get as far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they were going to have to be a part of that jury. And then I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned prospective jurors. One of the questions that they ask is, would you be willing to put this person to death? As I understand, a lot of the comments were, yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
No
Well,
problem.
can you imagine
Yes,
hearing
sir.
that?
Yes,
Juror
sir.
after
Absolutely.
juror.
Yes, sir.
No
Juror.
problem.
Yep.
You entered a not guilty plea earlier, Mr. Henderson. I understand now you wish to change that plea. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You understand that the recommended sentence here is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
You understand that those may run concurrently or consecutively?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I'm going to ask you how you wish to plead today. Guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides whether those sentences are to run consecutive or concurrent, understand there's a statement to be made by at least one individual.
This is an excerpt of a statement made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
As the grandmother and the person who raised Russell, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your family since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt, and you'll continue to be in our thoughts and prayers as we know that your pain will never go away. You have showed such mercy, and we are so grateful. You have given us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we as a family hope that as you sentence Russell, that you will do it concurrently, 2 life terms. For the Russell we know and love, we humbly plead, Your Honor, to not take Russell completely out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement at this time. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Miss Shepherd, not a moment goes by that I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was really wrong, and I regret greatly what I did. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. You have my greatest sympathy. Your Honor, I'm very sorry for what I did, and I know what I did was really wrong. And I'm ready to pay my debts to society.
Mr. Henderson, the court does not believe that you feel any real remorse for this matter. And I wonder, Mr. Henderson, if you fully understand the gravity of what you've done. He drove the vehicle that brought Matthew Shepard to his death. He tied him to the fence in order that he might be more savagely beaten, and in order that he might not live to tell his tale. He left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well he was out there, perhaps having the opportunity to save his life, and yet he did nothing. Therefore, the court finds it appropriate that sentencing be as follows. As to count 3, felony murder with robbery, that you serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Now, as to count 1, kidnapping, that you serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Now, sentencing for count 1 to run consecutive to sentencing for count 3.
After the hearing, we spoke to Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years, and Russell's only 21 years old, so I've known him his entire life. I ordained Russell a priest in the Mormon church, so when this happened, you can imagine my disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was to excommunicate Russell from the Mormon faith. What that means is that your name is permanently removed from the records of the church. No one will be assigned to visit you. You will not be remembered in prayer. Your name will not even be brought up in context. You just disappear. Russell's reaction to this was not positive. He was hurt. He was hurt, too, to realize at that point the seriousness of his transgression. I will not desert Russell. That is a matter of my religion and my friendship with the family.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker at the theater department. She's producing Angels in America this year at the university.
Well, I think that's the focus the university has taken, that we have a lot of work to do. We have an obligation to find ways to reach our students. And the question is, how do we move them? How do we reach a whole state of people with some deep-seated hostility toward gays? How do we do it? This is the beginning. And guess who's auditioning for this?
My parents.
Jedediah Schultz.
My parents asked me what shows I was doing this year in school, and I was like, Angels in America, and I gave them this whole list of shows, and they're like, Angels in America, isn't that scene you did in high school, that play you did in high school? I'm like, yeah. And she's all like, well, Whip, are you gonna do it? And I'm like, yeah. And we got in this huge argument, and the best thing I knew I had in them, they had just seen me in a performance of Macbeth, and like, on stage, I murdered this little kid and Lady Macduff and these 2 other guys, and she's all like, well, you know, homosexuality is a sin. I'm like, Mom, I just played a murderer tonight, and you didn't have a problem with that. I tell you, I've never prepared this much for an audition, like, ever. Not even close.
Well, not having had that much contact with gay society here in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rob Debris.
Well, once we started working into the case and actually speaking to the people that were gay and finding out what their underlying fears are, well, it sort of hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that fear. And we'll still have people who want to hold with the old ideals, and I was probably one of them 14 months ago. But I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to put up with it. If you don't like my views on it, fine. The door goes both ways. I've already lost a couple of buddies. I don't care. I feel more comfortable and, well, I can sleep at night.
So you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie Flutie.
And I was able to have the DNA test done, and they got me up to Fort Collins, and then they drew the blood there, and then they flew that to Michigan, and they did the DNA work there. And then what? I found about a week and a half later, I am negative for good.
We were all on our knees saying, Hail Mary!
You're just so elated, you know, when you're thinking, thank God, right?
So what's the first thing she
I
does?
stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. Yeah, you're just so happy, you know, you're just so happy. And you're thinking, you know, yeah, you know, I hope I did this service well. I hope I did it with some kind of integrity. And you're just so happy. And my daughters, they just bawled.
They were so happy.
And the force.
Oh boy!
They all went out and
Got
got
shit-faced.
That's right. And they all bought me drinks too. It was great. And we hugged and we cried, and I kissed everyone who came through that door.
Reggie, they don't need to know
It
that.
didn't matter if it was a male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
What part of what I just said you didn't understand?
Oh, get over it, Ma.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question that is on most of your minds is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Cal Maruca, prosecuting attorney.
And it is definitely the decision of the county prosecutor's office that this will be a death penalty case.
Well, part of me wanted McKinney to get it, but I wasn't too proud of that. I was on and off and on, but what am I supposed to do? That's just too personal for me.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. You know, because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe with all my heart, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know about the death penalty, but I sure as hell don't want him ever to come out of Rollins Penitentiary. I'll pay my nickel, whatever it takes, my little percentage of tax, a nickel a day. I don't ever want to see his ass come out into society again, and I sure as hell don't ever want him again in my bar.
Now, I don't believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me. I don't believe that one person should be killed as redemption for having killed another. I mean, two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest? If the Shepherds want McKinney dead, I just can't interfere in that. On a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron. He was called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now, our most important teachers must be Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson. They must be our teachers. How did you learn? What did we do as society to teach you that? You see, I'm not sure if people will let them be their teacher. I think it would be wonderful if the judge would say, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. The state of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney, court docket 63H2, the Honorable Barton R. Voigt presiding.
During Aaron McKinney's court trial, the prosecution played a tape recording of his confession.
My name is Rob Debris, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used against you in a court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that confession.
So you guys, you and Russ, you go to the fireside, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you go when you leave the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
What's he look like?
Like a queer. Such a queer looking dude.
He looks like a queer.
Yeah, like a fag, you know.
Okay. How'd you meet him?
Queer? Fag? Yeah, we were meeting at the bar. He asked us what we were doing, what we were drinking.
Okay. Tell me, what happened after you met him?
He asked us for a ride home. Thought, well, the dude's drunk. Let's just take him home.
When did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
Kind of talked about it at the bar.
Okay. What happened next?
Well, we drove him out past the Walmart, and we got out there. Started grabbing my leg, grabbing my genitals. I'm like, yo, man, I'm not a fucking faggot. You touch me again, you're gonna fucking get it. I don't know what the hell he was thinking, but I beat him up pretty bad. I think I killed him.
What'd you beat him with?
Blacked out. Fist, pistol. Butt of my gun. Wonder what happened. I don't know. I had a few beers, but I don't know. It was like, I could see what was going on, but I don't know. It was like someone else was doing it.
What was the first thing that he said or that he did inside the truck that made you hit him?
Well, he put his hand on my leg and started sliding his hand up like he was going to touch my balls.
When that defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I just wanted to vomit. Because that's like saying that it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense. When that guy killed Harvey Milk and Moscone, it's the same thing.
As much as May didn't want the defense saying that it was gay bashing or gay panic, part of me was really relieved because I was scared they were going to say that the defense was going to say that it was robbery or that it was about drugs. So when they used gay panic as their defense, I thought, this is good. Finally, the truth is going to come out. Finally, the truth is going to be told.
Did he ever try to defend himself against you or hit you back?
Sorta. He tried his little swing things, whatever, but it wasn't very effective.
Okay. How many times did you hit him inside the truck before you guys stopped where you left him?
I'd say I hit him 2 or 3 times. About 3 times with my fist. About 6 times with my pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Yeah, he was getting the shit kicked out.
What did he say?
After he asked me to stop, most all he's doing was screaming.
So Russ kind of dragged him over to the fence, I assume, and tied him up?
Something like that. I just remember Russ was laughing at first. But after a while, he got kind of scared.
Was Matthew conscious when Russ tied him up?
Well, I told him to turn his head around and not look at my license plate because I was worried he was going to tell the police. But I asked him what my license plate said and he read it, so I hit him a few more times.
Just to be sure. So, obviously you don't like gay people.
No, I do not.
Would you say that you hate them?
I wouldn't say I hate it. And when they come on to me and stuff, I get pretty aggravated.
Did he threaten you?
This gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really.
Can you answer me one thing? Why did you guys take his shoes?
I don't know. Now I'm never going to get to see my son.
I don't know. Probably go to court sometime later today.
Today. You mean I'm going to go down there and plead not guilty or guilty today?
No, you're just going to be arraigned today.
Is he going to die for sure?
There is no doubt that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
What are they going to give me? 25 life or death penalty and get over it?
That's not our job. That's the judge's job and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder, kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
Aaron McKinney was charged with felony murder, which means that the jury could give him the death penalty.
That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard were approached by McKinney's defense team, who pled for their client's life.
The prosecution indicated that they would defer to the family's wishes as to whether or not to pursue the death penalty.
The following morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated, and he wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6, 1998, he tried to show the world that he could win again. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep wondering the same thing I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he have become? How could he have changed his piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, with your friend Mr. Henderson, left him out there by himself. But he wasn't alone. There were his lifelong friends with him, friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who these friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon that we used to look at through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. Through it all, he breathed in the scent of pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. And I feel better knowing that he wasn't alone. Matthew's beating, hospitalization, and funeral focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. People have said enough is enough. I miss my son, but I am proud to be able to say that he is my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It's been stated that Matthew was against the death penalty. Both of these statements are wrong. Matt believed that there were crimes and incidents that justified the death penalty. I too believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, this is the time to begin the healing process, to show mercy to one who refused to show mercy. Mr. McKinney, I am going to grant you life, as hard as it is for me to do so, because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time you wake up in your prison cell, remember that you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious, And I will never forgive you for that. Mr. McKinney, I give you life in memory of one who no longer lives. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
Me and Debris hugged and cried, and everybody had tears in their eyes. And you were just so thankful, you know? And then Mr. Shepherd was crying, and that got me bawling. And then everybody was just, yes, now we can go on. Now we don't have to be stuck anymore.
This is all we've lived and breathed for a year, daily. This has been my case daily. And now it's over.
It just hit me today, the minute that I got out of the courthouse, that the reason that God wanted me to find him is for he didn't have to die out there alone, you know? And if I wouldn't have come along, he wouldn't have been found for a couple of weeks at least. So it makes me feel really good that he didn't have to die out there alone.
I'm just glad it's over. I really am. Testifying in that trial is one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Don't get me wrong. I love the stage. I really do love it. But it's tricky, you know, because basically what you have is lawyers question you from this angle, but the answers need to be funneling this way over to where the jury is. So what you got to do is sort of devise a funneling system, which is hard for me because I'm a natural conversationalist. That's a natural instinct when someone asks you a question to make eye contact with them. But, you know, it's tough, you know, to literally scoot over, change position, in effect, funnel over where the jury is, but I mean, I was able to do that several times over the course of my testimony.
On our last trip to Laramie, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz perform the role of Pryor in Angels in America. After a performance, we spoke.
I didn't for the longest time let myself become personally involved in the whole Matthew Shepherd thing. I mean, it didn't seem real. It seemed so blown out of proportion. I mean, Matthew Shepherd was more of a name than an individual. I don't know. I just feel bad. Just for all those things I said. For the person I used to be. That's why I want to go back and hear all those interviews from before, from last year when I said all that stuff. I mean, I don't know. How did I ever say all that stuff about homosexuals? I mean, how did I ever let all that stuff make me feel like you were different from me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And now, now it's obviously changed in the fact that throughout the last year, I've really realized my role in taking my part. So now, instead of going to school to be in music, I'm going to go to school for communications and political science because I have a career in political activism. Actually, I just recently found out that I was going to be honored in Washington, D.C. from the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think about the Angels or any of the speaking that I've done, you know, that Matthew gave me, Matthew's like guiding this little path with his light for me to walk down. And he just, every time we get to like a door, he opens it and he just says, okay, next step. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
This is Jonas Sloneker.
Change is not an easy thing. And I just don't think they were up for it here. I mean, the town got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserved, and we look good now. Justice has been served. The OK Corral. We shot down the villains. We sent the prostitutes on the train. The town is cleaned up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. Well, Matthew Shepherd's been dead a year now, and Wyoming ain't done shit. Any town, anywhere has passed any type of laws. No anti-discrimination laws or hate crime legislation. No one anywhere has done anything. So what has come of this? What has come out of this that's lasting or concrete?
We all said we'd meet again, one last time at the fence.
I've been up to that side in my limousine, okay? And I remembered to myself the night he and I drove around together. He said to me, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And from where he was up there, if you sit exactly where he was up there, Laramie sparkles from there. With a low-lying cloud. It's the blue light that's bouncing off the clouds from the airport. It goes tss, 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 right over the whole city. I mean, it blows you away. Matt was right there in that spot, and I can just picture, in his eyes, I can just picture what he was seeing. The last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We've spent the last 2 days packing up a year's worth of materials and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and interviewed over 200 people. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck. When we asked her how Laramie would feel seeing a play about itself, she said,
Well, I think we'd enjoy it. To show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice. But that's in turn how you portray us and how Laramie behaves.
And as we got off the phone, she said to me,
Now, you take care, honey. I love you.
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about the whole event. Galloway offered me or anyone else a place to stay if and when we should return to Laramie. He also seemed interested if there'd be any open auditions for this play.
We left Laramie at 7 in the evening. On the drive to Denver, I looked in the rearview mirror to catch one last look at the town.
and I will speak with you. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.